Okay, you knucklehead, I am going to make you a little math video for the last half of our algebra, okay? And that way we can be done with it for this week. All right, so we are working on page 205, and we're doing the second half, which is numbers 15 through 28, okay? We're going to do them all. So just a reminder that we're working with A plus BI as our equation formula, okay? And so for number 7, 15 through 28. All right, so for number 15, we're working with the adding and subtracting of these equations. So number 15 is 5 minus 8i minus negative 2 minus I, okay? So what we want to do when it's adding or subtracting only, we can take our real numbers and our imaginary numbers and we can group them together to make them simpler to deal with. So in my first section, I'm going to take the 5 and I'm going to take the 2. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to distribute, okay, this negative. No, I don't. Okay, sorry, minus 2. So I'm going to take 5 and minus negative 2. Okay, so that's done. And that's done. And then plus, why? Because of the formula. And I'm going to take minus 8i from here. And I'm going to subtract negative 1i. Okay, so I'm all set up. The next thing I want to do is just kind of clean up my sign. So I've got a negative and a negative, which make positives, right? So 5 plus 2 is 7. Then I'm going to add. I've got a negative 8, and then I've got 2 negatives again, plus plus, a negative 8, and a positive, and 1 positive I will give me a negative 7i, okay? And actually the way I should have wrote this one is it should have said negative 8 minus negative 1 with the I outside, okay? So that's a little easier to see, I think. When I've got negative 8 plus a positive 1, I know that it's negative 7, and then I bring in my I, okay? Number 16 is exactly the same, except that we're adding. So I've got a 28 minus 5i plus 3 minus I. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to take those real numbers, 28 and the positive 3, and I'm going to put them in my first group. So I'm just going to group those together. Done and done. I'm going to add into my second group, and I have a negative 5 plus, nope, I'm just going to make it a minus 1. And we'll put the I on the outside. Okay, remember there's like an imaginary 1 in front of here. So when I go to group these together, I have 28 plus 3, which is 31. Then I'm adding negative 5 minus 1. So remember we can go plus minus there. Negative 5 plus negative 1 gives me negative 6. And don't forget your I. And that is your answer. Come up here. Dunzo. Number 17. All right, now we're going to start here with this, and they want you to break it down and give the absolute value of it. Quick reminder that we've talked, and then we talked in the Zoom about there are 4 I's that you just kind of need to memorize. So the first one is just I itself. Remember, it's kind of like an imaginary 1 exponent up here, and that is just simply reduces to I. If you have an I squared, that will equal negative 1. An I cubed is going to equal a negative I. And let me break that down for you. So in I cubed, I have an I squared, right, which we know equals negative 1 from this. Then I'm going to multiply that by just one I left over. right? Because I've got I cubed. So I've dealt with 2, now I'm dealing with the last one. And an I by itself is just simply an I. So I've got -1 times I, which is going to equal -I. That's how I got that one. And then the last one I want to memorize is that I to the 4th power. And that one is a beauty because it is just the number 1. Okay? So what we're going to do with these is when we simplify them, first we're going to take out all the 4's that we can. So I would take the number and divide it by 4. 4 goes into 8 2 times, okay? So what that breaks down to is 2 sets of, so I've got 2 of the 4 i's. So I've got I to the 4th, I to the 4th. So that will equal 1 times 1, right? That's what they're each worth, is 1, which of course just gives me 1. And that's your answer. Okay. On number 18, we're going to do the same thing with I to the 26th power. Now, I'm going to do the same thing. I4 is my best friend. I want to see how many sets of 4 I have, and because they're all going to, it doesn't matter how many times I multiply 1 by itself, it's still going to equal 1. So all of the ones, all of the sections of 4 I can take out, they simplify to 1 and they're gone. So I'm going to take 4 and divide it into 26, which will come through 6 times with a remainder of 2. Okay, so I can break this down to I4. I can take it 6 times, and basically, like I said, I mean, I could take I times I times I times I. It doesn't matter. It's going to equal to 1. Okay, now I have my remainder 2. So I've got 1, and then I've got my I squared, which we know from over here is equal to -1. So when I multiply these two numbers, +1 times -1 equals -1, okay? And that's your answer. 19 and 20 are the same, but let's go ahead and do them, okay? Because this is new to us. All right, so you're gonna have to excuse my scratch paper. I tore up some random book in the house, don't even know. Okay, number 19. Let's break this one down. I to the 83rd power. So again, all of the I to the 4th power that I can take out of this, better off, right? So let me divide 4 into 83 2 times. Bring down the 3. 4 will not go into a 3, so I've got 20 remainder 3. So I can take 20 sets of 4 out of this. And that is going to account for quite a few. So I've got I to the 4th power. I can do that 20 times, but it's still going to equal a 1. Okay? So I've taken 80 of these away. Now I need to deal with my I to the 3rd. So that leaves me with I cubed. And we know from our notes, which I'm sure you wrote down, that I cubed is going to equal -I. So I keep that little, so I've got -I. So if I have a 1, let me make sure I can see that that's an I. 1 times a -I, I'm going to end up with a -1I. Okay, and that -1I is your answer. Let's break down another one. Number 20. All right, and this one's a really big one, I to the 361st power. But again, I don't care if it's 361 million, it doesn't matter. We're going to divide it by 4 and knock out most of it. So 4 into 361, and you're probably putting this into your calculator. 4 times 8 is 32, 4 times 9 is 36. So that takes care of that. Bring down the 1, won't go in. 90 remainder 1. So I to the 4th power, I could take that 90 times. Still going to equal the +1. That takes care of 360 of these, and I'm just left with I, which equals I. if I multiply these two, 1 times I, I'm going to get I. And that's my answer. Donezo. All right, number 21, we're almost done. Come over here, scooch over a little bit. Number 21. So now we're going to take the A plus BI formulas or equations, and we're going to multiply. So this first one's pretty easy. I'm going to take a -3 and I'm going to distribute it into 2 plus 5i. So it'll just be -3 times 2, which is a -6, and then -3 times 5i, which will give me a -15i. And that's pretty much it. You really can't simplify anything else there, so there's your answer. All right, number 22. Well, I guess we could say plus and negative. I don't know. I don't know which one. I mean, I just like to -6 minus 5i. I like that one better. Simple. Okay, number 22 is 9i times 2 plus 1. We're going to do the same thing here. The only difference is that my I is on the outside and it wasn't on this one. But keep in mind, if this was 9x, you would know exactly what to do. Don't freak out just because this variable has changed. In this instance, the rules still apply, and you're just going to treat it like a variable, like an x or a y or a z, anything you've dealt with before. 9i times 2 is 18i. When I multiply 9i times 1, I get plus 9i. Stays the same. Anything times 1 is itself. I can take these two guys and I can, oh, wait a minute. 2 plus I, my bad. Yeah, wrote it down wrong. So I've got 9i times I, which will give me 9i squared. I knew I was doing something wrong there. So I'm going to check and make sure I can't simplify it. But the thing is that, remember that I squared in our notes? It equals a -1. So we can simplify this. And I have 18i plus 9 times, and I'm going to replace I squared with that -1. 18i minus 9, but don't forget we have to be in A plus BI order, so that I have to have the -9 first, then I'm going to add 18i. A plus BI, and that's your answer. All right, number 23 through 26 are all pretty much the same, but that's okay. Let's look at them. Number 23, these are going to be side-by-side multiplication, and you're going to have an option to either use FOIL or use the box method. So I'm going to do both for the first couple, and just so you can see it again and decide if you like it, okay? So first we have the box, and the way it works is we take the first numbers and we're going to put them 3 and I on the outside, and then have 2 and -I, and I'm going to put those down on the left. Now when we multiply using this box, we use it kind of like a multiplication chart. You know how you'd have like a 1 here and a 1 here, and we'd say, oh, 1 times 1 is 1. So this would be 3 times 2 is 6. And it would be the same thing if I'm coming down and, you know, I kind of meet. So I've got 2 times I is 2i. And then I'm going to come down the 3 and across the -I. So 3 times -I is -3i. That got kind of messy. Make sure my negative's there. And the same thing, I times -I will be, I'm sorry, it's, ooh, no, yeah, it's positive I and negative I, so it'll be a -I squared. Okay, from here, we're going to just write things in order. I'm going to go 6 and then 2i, so I'll have 6 plus 2i. Then I'll just go this way and keep writing. Minus 3i minus I squared. All right. this point, we're going to start simplifying. I'm going to take my two middle numbers. So I've got 6 plus 2i and negative 3i. Well, if I have 3 negatives, remember these 2 positives, we'll cancel them out. That leaves me with a negative I. And then I've got negative I squared. But don't forget, we can take that I squared and we can make it a negative 1. So I've got 6 plus negative I minus 1. Okay, so I can simplify again. I've got a 6 and a negative 1, which are going to leave me with something's wrong. Oh, yes. So it's a negative I, so it's minus a negative 1. Yay, okay, I knew something was wrong. Minus a negative 1. So I had a minus I squared, so this minus is going to come here. And then I squared equals a negative 1. So there's the second negative. So I've got plus plus. Yay. 6 and 1 is 7 minus I, and you're done. Sorry if that was confusing, but you gotta keep them straight. Okay, so that's number 23. All right, number 24. Same thing. I've got a negative 2 minus 6i times positive 1 plus I. All right, so this time we'll do FOIL. All right, so my first numbers in each bracket, it's a negative 2 times a positive 1, so I'm going to keep that a negative 2. So that's my first. Now my outside numbers, negative 2 and I, will give me a negative 2i. So that's my outside numbers. My inside will be right here, back to back. Negative 6i times 1 is still a negative 6i. And that takes me to my last numbers, L, which will be negative 6i times I. So a negative and a positive, still a negative, but when I multiply those i's, I get I squared. Okay, so at this point, we can start simplifying. I've got a negative 2i and a negative 6i, and I'm going to combine those to make a negative 8i. Okay, I'm just going to combine them. Now, when I look at, I'm going to say minus 6 times a negative 1. Okay, and I'll drop this negative 2. Okay, now at this point, we're ready to start combining some more numbers. So I've got a negative 2, and negative 6 times negative 1 give me a positive 6, okay? So positive 6, negative 2, so I've got 2 negatives, and I have 6 positives, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these 2 cancel out, and all that's left are the 4. So I'm going to say I've got a positive 4, and then I'm left with negative 8i. Okay, there's your answer. That's number 24. Almost done. Number 25 is the same. It's the same. You get 2 more of these. So 7 plus 2i, 1 plus 4i. Okay, and I really like the FOIL method better. I'm just going to do the box method again, just in case it kind of makes sense to you, okay? So again, I'm going to take my 7 and my 2i, and I'm going to put them on top separately. So I've got positive 7, positive 2i. And then I have 1 plus 4i, so I've got 1 and a positive 4i. And remember, we're just going to come down this direction and this direction, and where we meet, I'm going to multiply those numbers. So 1 and 7 is 7. I keep going across here. That 2i starts going down. Boom, they meet. 2i times 1 is still 2i. Same thing, if I keep bringing that 7 down, I'm going to meet in the middle with 7 times 4i, which will give me a 28i. Keep going, 4i. You're going to meet 2i. I've got 4 times 2 is 8. I times I is I squared. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and out here, I'm going to say 8 times -1. I'm going to make it a -8, okay? I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now so I can get it done. Okay, at this point, I'm just going to go in order. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to write them out as a new equation. So I'll take 7 first, plus 2i, plus 28i, and minus 8. Okay, at this point, we end up kind of like we would have with FOIL, okay? I'm going to start combining things. I've got 7 and -8, and then I have a 2i and a 28i. So 7 and -8, if I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 negatives, I can take care of them with those positives. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positives, which leaves me with just 1 negative. So I'll say -1, and these two are done. Then I'm going to combine a positive 2i and a positive 28i. 2 plus 28 is 30, and then I just give them their label. And my answer is -1 plus 3i. Okay, 3 more to do. 26. Whoops, there goes the dryer. All right, number 26. Last one like this. All right, 7 minus I times 1 minus I. Okay, let's do the FOIL again for this one. All right, so first numbers, 7 times 1 is 7. Then I'm going to do the outside numbers. So I've got 7 and -I, which is going to give me a -7i. That's the outside. Whoa, yeah, that's the outside. Inside will be the -I and the +1. Remember, this is like an imaginary 1 here. So I've got a -1 and a +1, still a -1. So I'm just going to call it -I. And then last, I have -I and I have -I. A negative times a negative is a positive. I times I gives me I squared. Okay, so let's simplify this some more. Now first I can combine these, right? So I'll have 7, and I've got a -7 and a -1. So they're all negatives. I'm just going to make it -8. So those are done. And then I've got a positive, and now remember I squared equals -1. So I'm going to say plus -1, or it could just be -1. All right, so I have +7, -1. So I'm going to cancel one of my positives out, because remember the positive and the negative, if you get 2 of them, they're canceled. So I'm going to have a +6 left over minus 8i, which is what I have left. Okay, that's the last of those. So you've kind of seen the FOIL and the box. If you like one better than the other, or if it just is easier to you, then practice that one, okay? As long as you get the right answers, who cares? 2 more to do, and then you're done with math this week. All right, 27. Okay, now this one is, we're doing subtraction again, but the format's a little different. We have 5i minus 4 plus 6i. So I'm just missing my a over here. That's okay. So first thing I want to do is I want to kind of rewrite, and I want to take the subtraction bar and I just want to distribute it inside, okay? Because I just kind of I don't want to have to worry about it anymore. So I'm going to say 5i. So basically it's just going to change the signs, right? +4 becomes -4. 6 times negative, positive 6 times the negative, when I multiply those, becomes minus 6i. So I just kind of changed the signs in front of those numbers. And now this is a little easier for me to look at. When I look at my common terms, I have a negative 6i and a positive 5i. And don't forget, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 negatives are going to get canceled out with every positive. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That leaves me with 1 negative. So I'll have a negative I, and I'll put my negative 4 in front of it. And that's it. Donezo. Okay, last but not least, number 28. Now this is exactly what we've been doing. They're just going to use decimals, but don't let that trip you up. Just remember how to do decimals. You'll be fine. So I've got 1.5 minus 2.I plus 4.3 plus 1.4i. Okay, so just like we did before, when we're adding or subtracting these, we can combine the real numbers and combine the irrational numbers. So I have 1.5 here, and I'm going to add that to 4.3. So I'm going to take care of this one and this one. I'm going to rewrite them down here. I'm adding that to, I've got negative 2i, negative 2.9i, sorry. And I'm going to add that to 1.4i. That's kind of messy, I know. Plus 1.4i. Let's separate it a little. Okay, so took care of that one, took care of that one. So everything's accounted for, and then we just have to start adding. Now, when I combine these two numbers, you can plug them into your calculator, or 1 plus 4 is 5, 5 and 3 is 8, okay? Probably better to start with the decimals in case you have to carry. So this one's taken care of. I add those together. Now I have negative 2.9 and a positive 1.4. So that would be like 2.9, 1.4, okay? So it's going to be a negative 1.5i. So when I take the difference out of those, this is what I end up with. And I probably would just leave it 5.8 minus 1.5i. Don't forget your decimal there. Okay, you're done. If you need anything else, holler at me. And if not, then I will talk to you on Monday. Bye, sweetie pie.